Good morning, everybody. I wanted to make a quick video today to go over the Update 53.1 patch notes, which might not seem like they need a whole video to talk about, but they come with one very interesting feature that I think a lot of people will be interested in, as well as a couple other minor things which also have a bit of an impact. So we're going to start with the high yield stuff first. There's a bunch of balance changes in here, a lot of cool things, bug fixes all over the place for many different enhancements, a bunch of balance changes on epic destinies, but one of the ones you're going to see everywhere is this one. Shiradi prisms Stay Good and Stay Frosty now have a 5% chance to proc their damage on spellcast, and Shiradi Prism Stay Good and Stay Frosty's effects now scale off of 50% spell power for casters. Now, this is a huge adjustment. It's basically a 91% damage nerf. So you might be wondering, okay, well, is Shiradi dead? Like, did they just gut and kill Shiradi? It's important to note that none of this affects the actual, ranged weapon scaling. So if you're an attack-based character, you don't have to worry about this at all. This is only for spellcasters. However, I can conclusively say that yeah, this basically does kind of murder Shiradi in terms of spellcasting, but also keep in mind that it's something that also kind of needed to go. So Shiradi was so powerful, you never even considered using most of the other Epic Destiny mantles because Shiradi just gave you so much damage and it was for free. Now, I don't like the heavy-handedness of these nerfs. I think they went a little bit too far in one direction. They could have done either the 5% or the 50% spell power scaling and seen how it went from there. However, I don't think that this is going to be a real problem. A lot of people are very worried. You're seeing a lot of doom and gloom in places. There are a lot of good Destiny mantles in this game, and you don't just have to use Shiradi Champion. The benefit of Shiradi Champion is that it does a high amount of damage while having absolutely no costs associated with it. Just hit the monsters with your spells. Even if they make their save, they still take the damage. And this applies to basically everything, and even worse, Stay Good does light damage, which is largely non-resisted. However, now you actually have to use a mantle that does other things. This might, again, seem like a bad idea. There is going to be a slight damage decrease on some builds that were heavily using it, and it means that spellcasters aren't as strong at level 20 as they were before, because you can't just slap on Shiradi and cheat your way through every bit of content. But don't worry about spellcasters, okay? They're going to be perfectly fine. One of the things I think people probably thought about with Shiradi when it was first releasing was like, oh, well, you still have to spam spells with it because it has a proc chance, and you can't spam spells that often on regular spellcasters. The problem is that Epic Destinies, this revamp, came with so much spell cost reduction all over the place and the ability to get extra spell points all over the place that every class could just spam, and so it made Shiradi just kind of the best thing. So, what do you do now that Shiradi is gone? Well, you go with good old Draconic Incarnation. Attune the Arcane gives you a huge amount of damage. On top of that, you can upgrade it so that it's got the extra proc effect, so it hits 4 times. So this big amount of damage is going to hit 4 times. Very, very strong on a single target. And then finally, you got the Dragon Speed, increasing or reducing your spell cooldowns and giving you mobile spellcasting. I don't love mobile spellcasting, but spell cooldowns is awesome. Fantastic thing. Or maybe you go Fatesinger and pick up the Mantle of Sound and Fury, because this might not look that impressive, but the temporary hit points are fantastic. The AoE damage is pretty nice, and the upgrades for the Mantle are not that bad, specifically the Resonance of Fate down here. Or you go Primal Avatar, which actually adds a ton of additional damage because it gives you multiple different procs, fire and light damage, or cold, electric, acid, and poison, that continue to deal damage to different targets. So overall, you have good defensive options and offensive options, so don't worry about Shiradi going away. I know some people are going to freak out about this, like, what do I do? I read a builder guide, or I saw something somewhere and people are telling me about Shiradi. What should I do instead? Just try out some of the other stuff. Don't worry, spellcasters are still very, very, very strong, and in some cases, you might even think, oh, I'm actually just going to get some build points back. Now it's not like I have to spend 8 points on Shiradi, and now you can just spend your points in other places. Again, it is a bit of a nerf, but it is one that, in my personal opinion, was needed. I just think that they went too far with the nerf. Instead of making it so it wasn't the best, they made it so it's basically a noob trap now, and you probably shouldn't take it ever. Unless you're a ranged character, at which point, go for it. It's really, really strong, of course, on like crossbows and bows and all that other stuff. Now let's cap out the rest of this with some positive news outside of just that. And as I said, I'm looking forward to the nerf because doing other stuff than Shiradi will feel good. But as I said, it's not going to affect everybody the same way. I spend a lot of time playing, of course. But some of the more positive stuff, a bunch of epic Destiny Tier 5 abilities came down in cost. This is stuff from, Divine Crusader, as well as you've got Draconic Incarnation, as well as I think there's also some from Shadow Dancer, all coming down in cost, meaning that the tier 5s aren't going to feel so expensive, which means that Vanguard's getting a buff. By proxy, Draconic Incarnation, which was already really good, is now going to feel even better than before. So I'm really looking forward to some of these changes, and those should be pretty fun. A bunch of standard bug fixes and item fixes and all sorts of stuff around here. Nothing super crazy, just a bunch of like bug fixes all over the place. But the other big one that I want to talk about in here was several champion damage over time effects now have internal cooldowns to prevent spam deaths, and several are now set to remove all stacks instead of one at a time. Now, you might not know what this means, but basically, when you fight a champion that's like a Soul of Cruelty, as an example, that applies a poison damage over time and an acid damage over time, if it hits you with a multi-hit spell, like a magic missile, pop goes the weasel, you're dead. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stacks of each, and you take the cumulative amount of damage. So you take the amount of damage from 1 stack, and 2 stacks, and 3 stacks, and 4 stacks, and 5 stacks, all in one go. It's basically instant death. So this is a terror on Hardcore League, and it's very hard to manage. And it's also something that you don't want to have to deal with even outside of Hardcore League. Like, it's just a lot of damage. So this is being adjusted, meaning you don't have to worry about it as much. I'm still going to recommend taking magic missile protection in different builds, but this definitely does help out quite a bit, so keep that in mind. Additionally, also, if you had been struggling with Hunt or Be Hunted, the force damage is less likely from the boss, so it's easier on your tank if that was ever a problem that was damaging you and was made difficult. And then another big one that I wanted to talk about is that apparently they've made adjustments to the Ddo Ui Skin creator or experience, so you can edit more things in the user interface. I don't know what this is because I'm recording this before the patch actually goes live. But if you're somebody who's like an artist and you like making your own UI skins and stuff, this is a great opportunity to get started and go with that. So please check that out later. And then apparently there's been an adjustment made of smoothing game performance, which is always hard to tell because sometimes it like works and it's visible, sometimes it's not, so you'll have to see it from there. Anyway, I'm looking forward to the patch. It's going to shake up the caster metagame a little bit with the Shiradi changes, which again I think are good. It's going to shake up the melee metagame a little bit with the adjustments to some of the costs. You're probably going to see some more people going into Shadow Dancer and some more people going into Divine Crusader that probably weren't before. And there's just a million bug fixes here. Look how many bug fixes. We got, you can now shift and use Fiendish Arpeggio while moving. Awesome changes. Wood Elf Falchion does extra damage because it does the amount of damage listed. Walker's Guidance is the amount of saves listed. Lightning Strikes the Mountain doesn't cost 40. Now it only costs 20, which is what it's supposed to. Enduring Beast and Nature's Protector now gives us listed strength bonus. For those of you that don't know, I should have prepped this ahead of time, but I know I'm just looking it up on camera because I'm excited. If I go into Druid Nature's Protector, there's an ability here called Enduring Beast, which gives you Healing Amp and Strength. It never granted the Strength, just never did. Now it does, so exciting. Sometimes these things are a long time coming, but you know what? Hey, it works. I'm happy about that. Anyways, that's pretty much all I have for this one. There's a lot of good stuff. As I said, I'm excited for it. If you're worried about the Shiradi power and that sort of thing, it does make it a little bit more difficult to consider going full Shiradi as a spellcaster because it's probably not going to be as good. It's not even that bad, especially if you're actually taking the Epic Strike in here for Fey Lights. And something that is important to note is that Feydark Fairy Lights, which I'll kind of go over here. Like, Shiradi Champion is not necessarily a bad Epic Destiny. You've got the Feydark Fairy Lights right here, which or Fey Lights, whatever it's called, which doesn't seem that good because it just has a Blind Daze or Silence. But once you get the full upgrade of it with the Fey Flare, so it stuns, this basically works on every single monster in the entire game, which makes it very, very strong. It's like Color Spray times 10, so it's very, very good. But it is your Epic Strikes, you're not doing as much damage, which then makes you wonder why you'd want to invest into this. But again, if you're doing some type of like Shiradi Magic Missile spammer that you were doing before, honestly, that build did take a big hit, you might still be able to play it. I haven't run the numbers, but it might still work, especially if you're going to be using Fey Flare to go along with this, or your Fey Lights to actually crowd control monsters. But that's going to need to be worked out. But at the end of the day, this damage number, where it is 30% chance to deal this damage at 100% spell power, is now going to be 5% at 50% spell power. Again, 91% damage nerf, but also might still be usable on some builds, which should kind of go to show how strong this ability was. It was a little nutty, and I'm not upset that they're nerfing it, but I wish they took like individual steps. I find Sandstone Games has a big habit of like leaving something for a long time, and then instead of incrementally adjusting it or doing smaller balance changes, just being like, wham, take it out, and then they get rid of it. So what are you going to do? That's the game that we play. So and if you're worried like that your build is broken, no, your build probably isn't relying on this. You should be able to just swap into another mantle. And if your build entirely relied on Shiradi Champion, might need to change your character a little bit, because there's so many good tools in all these different trees. You don't want to be just using Shiradi Champion. As I said, if you're like a magic missile spammer, you'll probably be fine. Anyways, I'm rambling, so that's where I'm going to end the video. Thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, follow the channel by subscribing, and check me out on Twitch, because I stream on Twitch, and I'm too lazy to actually edit this video, so I'm just going to upload it online. Goodbye!